35.
34.
33.
32.
31.
30.
29.
28.
27.
26.
25.
24.
23.
22.
21.
20.
19.
18.
17. 16.
15.
14.
13.
12.
11.
10.
9. 8.
7.
6.
5.
4.
3.
2.
1.
Hey, Rocky.
It'd be good if I turn on the mic. It's been a little rough start here tonight. And as you can tell, I got a little scratchy throat here. I've had a cough due to cold, as most Americans are suffering through this virus or whatever's going around in your upper respiratory, but I'm fighting it off. I started getting sick on Friday and making the turn, but my voice is a little scratchy, so bear with me. Probably a good thing tonight. I won't be talking as much. Hey, we got some new news for the show. I actually upgraded my StreamYard so we can actually live stream from a bunch of different places now. So we're not just going to the one place. So I'm scrambling around trying to get that straightened out. And we're going to have a good show tonight. I know you're probably all wanting to know what's behind the scenes of our election, our how we count our votes and how this software works and who's doing it and what's going on, who's pulling all the strings. And I've also done an extra good job on my conspiracy theory tonight. So I want you to stick around for that. Looks like we got everybody backstage except Lucy. So hopefully she'll pop in here. But I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest, Josh Merritt. He is with us tonight. So let's see, Josh. Josh, how are you doing tonight? I usually have your lovely wife, Dee Dee, on the show, on the Forensic Foreplay show. We talk about crime and misdemeanors, but it seems like your whole family is, surfaces around these type of issues and things. So, Josh, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, and then we'll ask some questions.
All right. Well, I spent about 10 years serving in the Army. After I got out of the Army, I got into computer systems, mainly the cybersecurity side, investigating foreign groups, investigating hacker teams that got into the U.S. Computer systems, whether it's SCADA systems, ransomwares, even cyber terrorists. And then in 2020, I seemed to stumble somehow into elections, which a lot of people wisely very told me I probably shouldn't touch it, but I didn't listen. And it chewed me in the butt a couple of times. Not only did the 2020 election get me, but then about a year and a half later, I was working as a red team member, investigating some pretty famous packet captures. And that went a little crazy as well.
Hold on a second. Hold on. What for us lay people out here? What's a packet capture?
It's a packet of communication between two computers. So when you talk from one computer to another, it has to encapsulate that and send it. It's almost like a little box on an assembly line that goes back between two computers.
Oh, I know the mouthwash is probably, bouncing between computers right now like crazy. I'm sure there's somebody's really not wanting to capture it though. But anyway, we're glad that you took some time with this. And as I said in the opening, I don't know if my mic was on or off, but I do the show with your lovely wife called Forensic Foreplay. And we, cover some cases that we're sort of familiar with. And so far they've been nothing going on. So we haven't had a show in a minute on that, but that's how I got to know you. And I was piqued my interest. I read an article in the New Yorker, and I didn't know you were the man behind the Trump campaign stuff. I mean, those people. It seemed like you did a pretty thorough interview on you, and I did I was able to gain some more knowledge about what you did. You served in Afghanistan for a year and in Iraq for a year. So you've seen what goes on over there. And now in that capacity, were you in computers only, or were you actually seeing action, or what was your capacity over? As long as you can tell us. I mean, we don't want to get you in trouble.
So when I was in the Army, I had a pretty good above board job. My first deployment to Iraq, I did convoy security, where we ran supplies from Kuwait all the way up through all of Iraq. And I actually was in Baghdad in 2005, December 2005, when they got to vote for the first time. And so that was sort of a back of my mind motivating factor because of what we witnessed in Baghdad with Al Qaeda trying to stop people from voting, which was really nasty. But a lot of Iraqis came out to vote. It was one of the most important things to them that there had been, was the chance to have a voice in government. And
is that when they had the purple thumbs?
Yes, when they all came out and they had their index fingers.
Oh, index finger. Maybe we need to do that here.
I was standing security in Baghdad, right outside of Baghdad International Airport that day.
Wow.
And, then I went to Afghanistan and then did route clearance where we pulled spicy Play-Doh out of the road. That bad guys.
Hold on a second. Oh, is that thing is captured whatever spicy Play-Doh? What is that?
That's what we use for the politically correct term for things that go boom.
Oh, okay. A little. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Just, I don't want no spicy, Play-Doh showing up at my house or anything. So do a good job tonight.
But yeah, when I was in the Army, I held about 4 different MOSs, and there was actually some controversy because the active duty unit that I was in when I was active duty, I didn't want them to deal with the 2020 fiasco. So when I did my affidavits, I actually used one of my training units on my affidavits because I was supposed to be left in anonymity because of some of the work that I've done. But because the lawyer didn't understand how to keep metadata hidden from the public, I got to watch myself get doxxed on Twitter in real time on about November 17th. And then WAPO sort of run crazy with me.
Yeah. Well, darn, I wish I didn't know you, and I would have jumped on the bandwagon and, put in my comments, because I'm sure, it would have been bad for you. And then it'd been embarrassing tonight when I actually get you on the show. You can say, hey, what did you do to me there? So, all right, I think we got enough to get going here with the folks, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do this tonight. I'm going to play Small Talk. Now, Mark Small, he's a Republican, and a lot of people say that he's not a Republican. I don't even think they give him the courtesy of calling him a rhino. He's just very left-thinking person. So, if our party's a big tent, he's going to be probably near the back of it, probably calling some stuff out. But he's always got some interesting insight. But Josh, you'll find this interesting. He was actually on the team of lawyers that challenged the 2016 election. And it was because of this. Yeah, so you may know a little bit about this. The espionage rule. It wasn't about the machines being messed up, but it was about Russian interference. So here you go. This is a guy. He'll tell you a little bit more about it, but then we'll talk about it on this side with the panel.
I'm Mark Small, and this is Small Talk. John's guest this evening on Mouthwash is going to be talking about how election software is messed up and how elections were rigged. I don't know if people realize it, but there were 2 cases brought before the United States Supreme Court in 2017 that challenged the outcome of the 2016 elections. Those cases were based in part on the Invasion Clause, Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States. I represented clients in both of those cases at the time. Now, also at the time, I caught flack from people nationally. We didn't get publicity, but I sure caught the flack. Professor Tribe from Harvard said that's not the way we roll in the United States. Like, we don't challenge illegal elections, I guess, in the courts. And yet he does that today. But what happened for us that's different from the challenge that's being sought by John's guest this evening, or was sought, and others on the 2020 election, 2 distinctions. 1, we were right, they're not. 2, we had the people on the other side of the case, Trump, McConnell, Pence, Ryan, all saying, well, sure, the Russians hacked the election. So what? The office of president is in the United States, the only election that I can think of where, well, the person with more votes might not win, and for no valid reason. But what should be valid is somebody being able to challenge an illegal election in court and not be kind of screened out so they don't get to have their day there. Sure happened that way with us. Mark Small talk.
So yeah, I'm going to call this the show of the misfit election deniers. Is what I'm going to look at it here. So Josh, you get to come out here and do that. And one thing I would add there, I think we have electoral college here in the country, and I think that would be a valid reason to counter votes that way. So anyway, otherwise the city folk could be telling all the farmers what to do because we don't have enough farmers. That's what I look at that for. So anyway, Josh, what do you think about that as far as the Russian interference with our election? I mean, you were in cyber, you've been in cyber security advisor for a while. Did you run across any of that type of stuff?
In October of 2020, CISA put out a memo called the Iran memo that had to do with Iranians who are attempting to get into the voter rolls within the United States. Within that, they specified that the Iranians were attempting to use a program called Accutenix. Accutenix is a recon program that you use when you try and find a vulnerability to get into a website or a database. So the first part is we have confirmation from CISA that attempt was going to take place. Next, if you look after the 2020 election, the FBI put out warrants for 2 Iranian nationals that were involved in Iranian APT Team 34 that were involved in modifying the voter rolls within the United States. And the one part that I never got to take to court, and I don't even know how far up the food chain it legitimately went, but I had a whistleblower from inside Iran by, I don't want to give his name, but a whistleblower.
Baghdadi.
A whistleblower from inside Iran who gave me not just operation orders that the Iranian government themselves put out for their plans in the 2020 election. I even have a video that shows how they did it. In one of the folders, you look at it and you can see 135,000 manufactured absentee ballots for the 2020 election. They were able to automate absentee ballots of everyone who was on the voter roll list for every state in the union. So that's the very beginning part. And what was being specified, my specific target had to do with something called Executive Order 13848. Which Executive Order 13848 has to do with foreign interference within the election. So I'm seeing Iranians on the top level getting into it. I'm seeing disinformation operations that were taking place by Russia. So we knew Russia was still actively involved. But the actual you had a 3-phase operation that really took place on November 3rd and then continuing on. So you have the intel work that's going on in the background. You have incidents like Connect, which True the Vote had come out and shown that Connect had access to all of the election workers and the role of all of the election workers, which actually came from another company that we found in 2018 called 10X, which were headquartered out of California. They were using a database program that's an open source database program called Moodle. And legitimately, they were putting text files with the usernames and passwords at every level within that server. So we were able to see the password to get into their Moodle directory was username was pink and the password was pink. So we knew, because I had started my investigations in 2018, and this wasn't just a Republican issue. I don't believe in parties. George Washington didn't believe in parties. I don't believe in them. So I did investigations for Republicans and for Democrats and for independents, and not just in the United States. I investigated elections in Mongolia, and I assisted with investigations in Uganda and helped them keep from their elections being frauded in 2021. So I don't see this as a political party thing. And I sort of, when I saw that that discussion that Mark wants to make about, you know, the difference is he was right and I was wrong. Well, he hasn't seen all of my data because most of the public hasn't seen the data. I'm the only person who actually has source code within election systems that are supposed to be black boxed.
All right, so tell us what black box is. You got a lot of terminology here that I'm like, okay, I think I know what that is. What's black boxed?
Black boxed is source code that is not, it's programming that's not supposed to be accessible by anybody because of contracts. So there was an incident where election software had been put out publicly. And so I took that software once it became public access and I opened every EXE and DLL up so I could actually see what the software legitimately does. And I've been working with a team of programmers to actually figure out all of the issues, the vulnerabilities, even every error code. When you look at the server logs that we've had since 2018, I now understand the programming involved in adjudication. I now understand the programming involved in ratio controlled vote. So I understand how the software actually does what it does, not just in the Windows programs, but even in the database, because your election system, which most people don't know, your election system is based off of software that goes as far back as 2007. I ran a penetration test to look for vulnerabilities within that software. And I have 3,700 pages of vulnerabilities in one location's piece of software. That's just one area.
Wow. I mean, I can just sit here and listen to these, to the what you're talking about. And it sounds so very complicated. It's a lot of ones and zeros bouncing back and forth. Let's get to the panel. I would honestly ask you questions all night, and I've already talked to you for an hour. So, Tiffany, unmic yourself. How are you doing tonight, Tiffany? I see you're. You don't look like you're at home.
I'm not. I'm down in Georgia. I'm in Kennesaw with my daughter. We drove down on Saturday. She her first day of class was yesterday. She's studying for her doctorate in chiropractics, and she let me stay in her apartment and clean. Yay.
Oh, cracking the bones. That's a good profession. You get to crack people's bones.
And she's watching Little House on the Prairie.
Okay, yeah, somebody said that was MASH. I'm like, no, I don't think so. All right, well, I'm going to get Brad up here, and then we're going to go to the questions. I'm sure, Brad, both of you, I saw your eyes perk up a little bit there, Tiffany, when he was talking about a few things. So, Brad, how are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Got a washer and dryer earlier this week, so I've just been doing laundry nonstop.
Okay, yeah.
I'm ready to give away.
Wow, so. That's exciting. How old are you?
Adult stuff, man. Adult stuff.
I was going to say this adulting's hard. I got a washer and dryer.
I got so excited for it. Like, yeah. No more going to the laundromat.
What kind did you get?
GE. I don't know.
GE? Oh yeah, that's good equipment. That's what that stands for. All right. Well, hey, let's fire out some questions there. Tiffany, go ahead.
So just listening to you talk about the vulnerabilities with the voting system, I appreciate all of your work in investigating. And so based on what you know, will you vote? Do you believe that our votes count? And, you know, like what's the course ahead for us as Americans who care about our country?
In my opinion, until it's on paper and counted by hand, your vote doesn't count.
Ooh, that's like, I think that's a lot of people think that that's the case. And, you know, I go out and try to get people to vote because we've got people trying to get elected, and that's their same sentiment. It's for some reason or other, they feel like their vote doesn't count. I think they just feel like their vote doesn't count.
All levels or just in our national election?
All levels.
All levels. I mean, like I said, people here in Mars Hill, in one precinct, there's like 1,000 voters or more in some of these precincts, and 51 people total voted in a precinct. That's ridiculous that happens. And if we have 26% turnout, so 1 in 4 in Marion County decided who our mayor was going to be, and the other 3 people, I guess they don't care. So
why would we believe polls though? then? Like, I don't understand like why one form of voting is okay, but then we vote online, and then all of a sudden poll is gospel, and people are like, oh, I'm up by X amount of points. So why would we believe that, but then not,
So the polls are what are used by political organizations to figure out the climate of their election. One of the leaks that I had found, I don't know if everyone here has heard of Seth Rich. Seth Rich was working for Bernie Sanders in 2015, and he found a lot of issues going on within the system, and he realized that Bernie Sanders was bought off. So he became a whistleblower, and he started leaking information to WikiLeaks. And he started showing the corruption that was going on in the DNC because he was mad that Bernie Sanders not only got cheated, but then he laid down so that Hillary could take the mantle. So, and when you start looking at how the elections are done, it's not just your main elections that there's fraud going on. It's even in the primaries. So they can make sure that their chosen person to go out front passes that line within primaries. So when you look at, I say all that because when you look at poll numbers, there was a leak that Seth Rich had. It was called Playing Around with NC, and it was a Excel spreadsheet from 2008. And what it does is it calculates early vote numbers so that they know on election day how many votes are needed so that their person can win at a certain percentage. And the example it showed was Barack Obama versus John McCain. And it shows that in North Carolina, they strategically frauded the election just in North Carolina so that Barack Obama would win by 0.6%. So they use those polls so they understand, okay, my candidate is 3 points behind. So if my candidate is 3 points behind, I'm looking at I need to pick up anywhere from 6 to 8% for my candidate to win. So it's
but I mean, from like a general public standpoint, like when people see those numbers, I feel like that's what they expect the vote to be when we do go vote in November. And so why would we believe even like I guess if everybody's wanting paper ballots, I don't know how we would even have an estimate as to what we really feel if everybody thinks that every vote is fraudulent, I guess.
So most of the modern world uses paper and hand counting. Canada, which there's an election company that's headquartered in Canada and from Canada, and they don't even use the equipment. If you look at France, Germany, England, every European country, they all do it by hand and hand counting. So they already have a distrust. Estonia is one of the exceptions. Theirs is all digital. They can even vote from their cell phone. But Harry Hursty went and evaluated them and said they still have a ton of issues. But the polling that's taking place isn't as much for the public as it is for the political sides to understand what they need for a pickup on election day. And so that's who it's really for, is for the two political sides to understand what the public's idea is. So if they say like the DCC, every year the DCCC puts out a targeting list and they say, these are the areas we're going to target every year. These are the areas that we're going to fortify every year. And they tell everybody, these are the areas they're going to focus on. So if you watch and follow, if they have a really strong Republican candidate in the area that they're going to, you'll start seeing little ways that the polls start shifting. You'll start seeing changes within local laws. We saw that a lot in 2019. If you look at Phil Klein's research into CTCL, they were using attorneys to go all over the country to alter voting laws to be favorable to the left. So you have to watch sort of the all-encompassing behavior of what they're doing, but a lot of it mainly focuses on those polls so they know, hey, if I want my guy in, which, and Democrats aren't the only ones that take advantage of it. Like everyone should go, how the frick does Mitch McConnell stay in office? Because literally nobody likes that guy. So that
Raise
was
your hand if you like him.
That one's pretty obvious. But it's a lot of little, and there's so many little indicators. A really good source to look at, they're called heat maps. Seth Keshel has created heat maps where he can look at statistical analysis of who's voting and in what districts, and he'll show you the areas that are most likely to be frauded based off of, like, you've got the HAVV rolls that show how many new people have registered using social security numbers. You have, and not just U.S. citizens, but foreign nationals who are coming into our country without authorization. I guess that's the best politically correct way of saying it. You've got the death roster. That the CDC is the best for watching deaths within the United States as closest to real time, and no election system, whether you're looking at the ERIC system, all these others, nobody's watching the death rolls. So, and yes, ma'am.
Mute, Tiffany.
So I'm listening to you talk about like people. I guess what you're saying is that if we looked at an election and whoever won, it's like, but then if we looked at the names of the people who actually voted, it wouldn't match with the people who voted. So
they're registered to vote. So like Houston, for example, in Houston of 2022, and if you look back through history, they opened an investigation on this. In Houston, Texas, they actually give a by name roster of everybody who votes in Houston. So I took all of the by name rosters and I ran them using a program called RStudio. I ran analytics on where the voters were registered to vote, who they were. Every day I was taking the vote and watching who voted and who didn't vote. We found over 100,000 instances of illicit voters, of voters being changed through the voter rolls. And we passed that information up, and that's why their DA opened, a Democrat DA, mind you. She opened an investigation into it, and they did find a substantial amount of fraud in Houston. So you have to watch the voter rolls very diligently. And so much so, I'm trying to work on actually training people all across the country to know how to watch the voter rolls and pay attention to who's voting on a hourly, if not by daily basis, to be able to catch whenever there's fraud going on down to the individual voting level.
I think that it's going to be. Hold on, Tiffany. I want to put up a question for here that Slickwitty asked: is there specific machines that are affected, or is this just just pretty much where it happens?
Every piece of election equipment is made in China. That's the first part. The second part, the election software, no matter the name of the company, all have the same back end. And I don't want to go too far, but I'll say this. All of the election system is written in .NET 4.0. So what happened was Visual Basic way back in the day, which is a program that dates back into the 90s. Somebody took the original framework from the original election system, converted it into .NET. And the furthest I've seen the .NET conversion going up is the .NET 4.6, which has been removed by Microsoft because of the amount of vulnerabilities. And they all across the board operate in the same fashion. They work in, you take your ballot, you scan it in, it becomes a subdomain in a program called IIS. And that subdomain then gets transferred over into SQL, which is a database program. And then the vote tabulation takes place in SQL. So there's about 4 or 5 steps internally that your vote does when it goes into the system to be counted. However, it becomes completely anonymity. It gets complete anonymity the moment you feed it into the machine after you vote. So once you feed your ballot into that machine, they can't tell if it's you. They can't tell if it's a fraudulent ballot. They can't tell anything from it. So they're depending on everything that goes in there to be secure. But when you have no chain of custody, like you see in a number of cities and states during the 2020 and the 2022 election, where there's no chain of custody, There's encryption files that are deleted called SHA files. You now can't depend on the legitimacy of those ballots because there's no evidence that those ballots are authentic. So the machines are a part of it. I would say maybe 20% of the problem. But then you start looking at the staffing within central counts. You start, in what free country would people ever be putting pizza boxes over the windows while people are counting your vote? Most countries on this planet, they would be rioting in the streets if somebody did that while they were counting votes.
You get pizza to count votes? I'm in for that.
Oh, they put pizza boxes.
Well, they had to get that pizza boxes from somewhere.
Right. In Michigan, they were putting pizza boxes over the windows so people couldn't watch them count the vote after. And I know everyone will say, oh, it's conspiracy theory. It never happened. Well, when I was watching on November 3rd, 2020, I remember the media coming out and saying, oh, there was a water main break. And like 5 minutes later, every central count in the country shut down and said, oh, we're not counting anymore. We'll come back tomorrow. All the Republicans leave, which they say, oh, we didn't tell them to leave. Well, they did leave. And then everyone starts counting to vote again. So, they're basically telling you not to even trust your own eyes. Just like when you see an unnamed person, and I won't say the name because in my opinion, election workers do an important job. So I don't believe it's right in any way, shape, or form for them to be harassed. But when I see a video of someone taking a stack of ballots and feeding it into a machine 3-4 different times without hitting a reset button or anything else, now that means that your anonymity vote that was fed into that machine just got put in triple.
Yeah, there's something there. Tiffany, go ahead.
Oh gosh.
I know there's a lot. I mean, it's just like a fire hose of voter stuff right here.
Completely forgot my question. I'm so sorry. Oh, here it is. So Hamilton County, you can either vote on election day, you can vote early, or you can absentee. So based on everything that you're saying, is absentee most secure?
No, in person. Show up in person on election day.
Okay.
That, to me, that's the compromise with everything. Don't do mail-in. Don't do anything unless you are in the flesh at the location and voting.
But based on everything that you've said about like the alphabet systems that you've mentioned, the back end, the machines and stuff, how can you say that in-person voting is the most secure after everything you've said about like the system and how the information, how votes are processed?
Because all the votes are processed the same way. They take all of the absentee ballots and they hold. Some states require them to do the tabulation before the vote. Others, they're only allowed to tabulate on the day of, but they're all running through the same machines. But if you were there in person, you have less chance of your vote from being compromised, because when they send you a mail-in, when they send you, there's reports of people all across the country where they're getting 5 and 6 ballots sent to their house when there's only supposed to be 1 or 2 people who live there. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're not getting anything in the mail that is questionable, and that's one thing to watch too. I don't know if any of y'all are set up to USPS where you can watch every piece of mail that comes to your house every day. That's a good way to monitor and make sure nobody's sending ballots to your house, and while you're away during the day, they don't go to your house, grab them before you get a chance to get to your mailbox. But there's, within everything that's taking place, the best thing that it seems is if you go to your listed precinct and you vote in person and you've signed in the voter roll, there's a less likely chance for your vote to be frauded through different systems. That's not to say the possibility of something like adjudication can't take place, because there are a lot of instances where people would vote and they would feed it in, and someone would. Adjudication is where you have an undervote or an overvote. An undervote is where you don't fill in enough bubbles on your vote. An overvote is where you put in too many bubbles. So those 2 reasons, and if you don't fill in a bubble enough, or those 3 reasons are the reason to send it over to adjudication. and there's supposed to be a Republican and a Democrat sitting at a computer looking at the screen when a ballot is to be adjudicated, and they basically call the shots for you and say, I believe this voter wanted to vote for this guy.
Yeah, we did that for absentees.
And they can alter your ballot completely
Hmm.
and change it completely. Every vote, they could change every vote on your ballot if you're given an undervote or an overvote. And that can happen to anybody, absentee, mail-in, in person, any of that.
If you didn't fill the dots in right. Okay, I got a question.
There's no machine involved.
Yes, whenever they load the machine, your ballot in, it goes into a computer, and they sit at a computer to be able to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
David Shelton has a question.
Yeah. So David Shelton, he's actually a clerk here, Knox County, Indiana. Has been on the show, runs a tight ship down there, and I know this is a big deal for him. Is there a paper trail from each machine that can and is compared to overall tabulation?
Yes, but the problem is the number of instances where chain of custody was broken. When you have a ballot box, it's supposed to be taped with secure tape to make sure when it goes from point A to point B, nobody messed with it. But there are numerous cases in different cities all across the country where that chain of custody was broken. There was no way to be able to say this wasn't tampered with. And so that's where a lot of people looked at it and said, if there's no way to be able to prove that this was secure from point A to point B, then we at the very least need to do a do-over. And that's what a lot of the discussion in 2020 was we had a lot of chain of custody issues. So that's just on that level. Then you go into NIST standards. When systems aren't held to basic standards, for example, the one system that I looked at, I found 111 instances of remote access into a server, and no one questioned it. So even when there's a paper trail on a number of systems, there are means and methods to get around those for people to be able to get access to alter information and feed up bad information. That's why we have to have election people with integrity and with checks and balances. And I'm not saying this is all of them. I'm saying there are a number of areas where it was suspicious. And I said it looked like there was a problem and there needed to be an investigation, because from my level, I'm saying, hey, there's a problem. If I see a vulnerability in a system, when I do a system scan and I see 3,700 pages of 14,000 vulnerabilities, that's not me saying there's fraud. That's me saying there's a chance for fraud.
So I know every state is different. Have you done any work in Indiana? And if not, which state is the most vulnerable?
No, I have not touched Indiana. And I believe in some of the stuff I'm looking at, I may be assisting some people for learning how to do analysis. I would say in the areas that we saw in 2020 and 2022, most of the places we saw that were targeted were, of course, the battleground states. Our last 6 states that were coming in at the 2020 election showed signs of manipulation. When you tabulate your vote, there should be no reason why, when you're watching the New York Times feed for the count of the vote, for the vote count to go up, and then all of a sudden it comes down. And then it goes back up again, and then it comes down. And we saw that in 2018, we saw that in 2020, and we saw that in 2022. And that's why I say, the being able to put in good people at the precinct chair level, being able to put in not just volunteers and people to work in elections departments, but also having tech people of 3 sides of the aisle. Because I see Democrats, Republicans, and then me, who's sort of I don't like either side and like teetering on anarchy.
The referee.
Libertarians.
Right. And I think there needs to be a broader level of monitoring. Like, in all honesty, I think all of the election system should be on camera and everybody should be able to watch it, because it's probably one of the most important events on the planet, because everybody around the world watches presidential elections, because who our president is affects the entire globe for 4 years.
So based on that, I guess there were people who were really happy with the way the 2020 elections came out, and it's exactly what they wanted.
Right. And it's just like if it had gone the other way, like 2016. 2016 was a surprise victory for a lot of people.
So wait, are you saying this is every year that somebody's pulling the strings, and like we're just like Pinocchio, like I'm a real boy, like we're not real boys, we're just puppets?
And the amount of intelligence agencies, foreign intelligence agencies that are in the election system, not just aggressors to the United States, but even friendly to the United States. When I looked at the election system, I can see their directory naming system, how they connect into the internet, and I found 3 foreign governments inside just their naming systems.
So, but you said before, when you were talking about like the thousands of vulnerabilities that you found, that they're not necessarily tied to fraud. So I'm just trying to understand. I mean, finding the vulnerabilities is a good thing. I don't know. I guess it's just hard for me to think that every election is rigged. I don't know. That's a lot for me. Maybe because I just won and I worked really hard. But
right. Well, and the problem in it is it's like doing an audit on a bank, right? If I'm going to audit a bank, I have to know that the dollar bills that are in the vault are all authentic. But if I go into that bank and I put in 100 super bill $100 bills, that there's almost no way that you can tell that it's a fraud. All you're going to do is just count the fraud over and over again. Jovan Pulitzer made some really good points about this in 2020. And he had come up with some really good methods to be able to evaluate ballots on their authenticity. The CISA had written a lot of doctrine on how ballots need to be created so that they know that they're authentic, made on certain types of paper, holograms put into them. There's a very lengthy description on how to make secure ballots. Most states didn't even follow that guidance and I don't want to say their name. Some of the paper manufacturers that were involved, when you have a specified type of paper that's supposed to be used, but then when you're looking at ballots and you're finding, if I say it's supposed to be 100-pound paper that's used for the ballots to be printed on, and I start looking at ballots and they're made on 25, 50, 65-pound paper, then each one of those ballots should be in question.
That's true.
Well, we have serial numbers on all of our money. You'd think that, and that's trillions, obviously about 33 trillion now that's out there at least.
Right.
So why can we not do it like money? Print a ballot that's got your special voter ID number on it or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And Josh, I just wanted to say, David Shelton, he is in our group chat, and he's just talking. And I've worked the polls in Indiana, and I think they're pretty secure. I mean, I'm not an expert. I know, we go in and, you zero out the machines, you set them up, you come in the next day, you zero them out, you make sure that you make sure that there's no votes on them before people start. And at the end of the day, you close down the machines, you pull your tape, and you make sure that your receipts match the number of people who've come through and voted. I feel like we've done a good job in Indiana with checks and balances. And
I guess the moral of the story is if Josh doesn't show up, you're doing okay.
No, there's a lot of people now who have eyes on, and that's a good thing. I mean, we've even, in Harry Hursty's credit, Harry Hursty in 2016 and even prior worked with DHS and CISA to be able to put in security systems into the election. We have what's called Albert sensors that are packet capture systems that watch communications within the elections. They don't have them everywhere, but they have them in a lot of the bigger areas. They have Einstein SIEM, which can watch for behavior of someone possibly being into those systems. So there are more and more checks and balances that are being put there. But the trick is we have to have more citizens who are in those locations, who are watching to make sure things don't go wrong. And we need transparency. You know that a lot of the battleground states where their central count was, the workers that worked in the central count were temporary workers that came from staffing agencies. So none of them were able to be discovered through FOIA requests.
That's a good point.
So
but I love it because it's like, there's the election part of it, but earlier on like irregularities in hiring. Where are these people coming from? Who's doing the hiring? We can't find them afterwards. And you said, states enacting like new laws right before an election and stuff like that. I guess that there are things that people might not catch.
Well, our election system in a lot of ways are overly complicated. Government's always good at overly complicating things. So because of that overcomplication, when you overly complicate it, there's, a tolerance problem where there's a gap between things. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of really smart people that go around in our country to look for those gaps. Mm-hmm. And so when someone finds that vulnerability or that gap, it may not be in a computer system. It may be, hey, this system, I can scan this over and over and no one will ever know. Or I can adjudicate all of these and no one will ever know because I can clear out the logs. Pennsylvania, one of the Specklin investigators in Pennsylvania evaluated the election system up there in Fulton County and found Python scripts on their computer system, which we knew there had to be secondary program scripts to be able to actually enact a lot of this. And that's all dependent on who actually has access to those machines. So while in some areas you have really good people who are making sure the system has as much integrity as possible, there are a lot of areas where people have a vested interest in making sure that their person is the person who wins.
Wow, yeah, it does take people to get involved, and here in Merritt County, you can vote anywhere. So it's sort of gotten rid of our precinct committee people. If you're a precinct person, your person could be voting up in northern end of Marion County, and so it's just sort of really taken away the work of those people. So now they feel like, oh, I don't want to do it. So I think the message here is get out and go to your polls and get involved, and either be a watcher or a worker or both for these things. All right, I want to switch gears now. Usually, we don't have the luxury of our guest asking for a poll question, but so I asked Josh when I was talking to him earlier this week, which poll question would you like me to ask? So I'd what's that? Oh, Tiffany wants to vote.
No, I was just saying asking for a poll question. I was just saying the pun in that.
John, your microphone.
I was coughing. Sorry, I saved you me coughing, and then I had to unmute my own mic. It's just, I think this cold, it gives you a foggy brain, which I already had. Now I just pretty much have London foggy brain or something. I've got an English accent from it. The poll question was, which news source do you trust most? I think I sort of paraphrased it for Josh, but so we did it on Twitter and we did it on Facebook, and didn't have a ton of people vote on Twitter on that question. They did on the January 6th.
You didn't manipulate it?
I didn't manipulate it at all. I could have had like 5 accounts for different shows, so I could, but Said where do you get your? And so the choices were mainstream media, social media, newspapers, or some other source. So on Twitter, we had 14% that believed that the mainstream's good. Then we had social media, 57%. So that's where I get all my news. If it's on Facebook, it's got to be true. Newspapers. A lot of people on Twitter must not read them because there was zero on that. Some other place, 29%. So totally a different situation on Facebook. We had more voters on that one. We had 85% that said they get it from some other place. So I don't know where that is. I didn't have another question of where that is. Newspapers, 3%. Mainstream media 6% and social media 6%. So you can see the difference in those.
I know the 85%. You said 85% get it from someplace different.
Someplace else besides those three things above. So
yeah, they get it from their phone.
from Mouthwash. Well, they didn't want to. I didn't want to brag, but they get most of their information from Mouthwash. So I mean, where else do you hear the truth from a guy that's in the trenches? You don't hear that on ABC. Although the New Yorker took time to talk to you, so we're up there with them. So
figure that out.
So we're going to go into January 6th a little bit. I know we're not going to talk about a lot of it because it's not as much in your wheelhouse, but you did testify before the committee, correct?
Yeah, for 9 hours.
Oh yeah, that was good. Did they let you go to the bathroom?
I think we had one bio break, which was during lunch. But other than that,
break.
And the bad part was I had one witness that was with me, which was an attorney that apparently now is in a mental institute, which, as bad as it may sound, a lot of people I've dealt with, you'd be surprised how many times I've caused somebody to go to a mental institute. So I sort of go, I'll chalk it up to another one of those.
We can't afford to lose any more viewers.
Seem unstable to you, or do you think they tucked him away?
She was unstable because she was telling me she was having dreams that she was told she was going to become Queen of America. So she was unstable.
All right. Yeah, that's.
This is Miss America weekend, just FYI.
Yeah.
Go Miss Indiana. Go Sydney.
It's BYOT. Bring your own tiara. This is. So I did a little poll on this about, we're going to talk about the January 16th because that's close to that. So I did a poll unbeknownst to me that was, you were going to come up with a question. So we did another poll here, and hold on, I got to put my glasses on. It's like my scratchy writing here. Okay, in your opinion, criminal sentences handed down to the January 6th assault on the Capitol, were they too harsh, not harsh enough, just right, or you don't know? So I did have somebody complain on Twitter that I didn't have a just right on there. It's not like baby bear porridge or, the Three Bears porridge, but that's what I did. So on Twitter, we had a pretty good turnout on Twitter. Too harsh, 30%, or no, too lenient. It was too easy, 30%. Too harsh, 57%. Just right, 4%. So it's probably just the one guy that was complaining, and not sure, 9%. On Facebook, it was 22% too lenient, 73% too harsh, 0 said it was just right. So, hey, they pleased everybody with this, and 5% of not sure. So that gives a couple questions for this. Obviously, the January 6th thing. Why were you there? And then maybe comment on some of the stuff that was behind the scenes from the computer cyber standpoint of things. I mean, not any, this or that, but what you saw or what you saw behind the scenes concerning January 6th that might make us think, something's going on there.
So first of all, one thing I want to laugh about and say is the one guy everyone thought was the Fed that was on camera telling everybody, hey, you need to go inside the Capitol. Yeah, he got a year of probation today. That's all he was given, a year of probation. And 100 hours of community service and $500 restitution.
And he could still run for president.
Yes, with a misdemeanor. So that's the first part. The next one is looking at Clay Higgins. Clay Higgins has been leading the charge on the investigation, representative from Louisiana. Clay Higgins has found there were over 200 FBI informants that were boots on the ground at January 6th. So we have whether they were actual agents or whether they were confidential human sources. We have people that were being guided by intelligence agencies, whether it's the FBI or any other three-letter agency, that were in communication with at least 200 people who were boots on the ground on January 6th. Now, I was invited, and I was invited by a number of high-up people who spoke that day and presented. And thankfully, my wife, who has way better intuition than me, because I run headfirst into everything thinking I can just shoot my way out, figuratively in Minecraft, not for real, told me, hey, don't go. It's a setup. The week it was announced, she said it was a setup. So I didn't go. And after everything went down, we sort of went, well, I told you so. So it was really a shock whenever I get a phone call from the January 6th investigator saying, hey, we would like to have a discussion with you, because I wasn't there, for one, because I'd been asked and I wouldn't go. Now, I later had somebody tell me when I got into the craziness that happened at the Lindell Symposium in 2021, I was specifically told, hey, you should have learned your lesson the first time. So I knew someone was going to try and get me in trouble at January 6th. So she was absolutely right. But when you see, it's just like in foreign countries, right? Like when you look at the revolution that happened in Ukraine back in 2013, 2014, when they had snipers in the city square and they were taking out protesters, you had government agents who were controlling the protesters. This happens in banana republics all across the country. We call them agent provocateurs, where someone is standing in a group yelling fire to get groupthink to begin to take place. Because one of the reasons, John, why I asked you where do people get their information from, was it was a test. Because we are in a day and age, if you study, me being a former soldier, I study combat, not just past, going all the way back, since warfare started, but even in current day. So I've studied 4th generation warfare and 5th generation warfare, and information is a part of warfare in this current time. What the media tells you, what social media tells you, everything that's being put into everybody's brain right now is a form of warfare, because people are
not here on the Mouthwash Show. We do not do that. Ours is fair and limited. And I just got a text message from Lucy, and she says she is sad that she missed again tonight, but she has some family issues that are obviously still not resolved. So we'll welcome her back in some time. And I know she really hates to miss this show, because I know that she's the queen of our conspiracy fact, none of this conspiracy things that go on. So fill us in. We're going to do one more thing here. And Brad, I want to get you on some questions.
I have a question, John.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Stop. Why did the J6 committee want to talk to you if you weren't there?
Because 70% of all election information that was put out by everybody prior to January 6th, 70% of that information was my research.
Oh.
Most of the stuff that you saw came from my research.
Like Sidney Powell's claim, like her lawsuit was based on your research, right?
Right.
Like, that was the Kraken.
No, because another person by the name of Tori takes the credit for it. However, I had briefed Sidney in early 2019. I had a meeting where I got to meet Sidney Powell and Herman Cain. I got to meet him before he passed away. We had an hour-long discussion about Pizzagate. He had never heard anything about that. So that was awesome. Great man. We had a lot of really big hitters who were at that meeting, and I had given them warnings about what we saw in Kentucky for Matt Bevins. So that's where she got her first introduction. The first person who had briefed her on what we believe was going to take place. So much so I even briefed the future ODNI at that time, which was John Ratcliffe. And I told him that there were plans and things that we were finding on the open source intelligence collection that were planned to be enacted for 2020. And not even joking, John Ratcliffe looked me straight in the eye and said, yeah, we know it takes place, but there's nothing we can do about
it. That's good to know. That's really good to know. So, Sidney Powell was recently charged down with Georgia in a RICO or something, what's without getting any trouble, or what's your thoughts on that? It seemed like it was a trumped up charge, if you know what I mean. No pun intended, Tiffany.
Fannie Willis just got in trouble today because she was going on extravagant vacations with some of the people involved. Her boyfriend was involved in those investigations. They spent over $635,000. He had met with the White House prior to them going after those 19 people that have been charged here in Georgia. So it looks like a duck. It smells like a duck. It's politically motivated, and it is someone trying to gain favor by trying to throw whatever they can, because we see that up in New York with the BS case they're trying to do against Trump. And don't get me wrong, I have some serious issues with Trump on the personal level. Like, I've never talked to the man, I've never got to meet the man, and I have serious issues, not only in his decision-making processes, which I know I'm the enlisted help. So for me to question it, that's minutia. However, when you stop and you look at the individuals involved in everything, you've got a lot of really questionable people. Like, that guy was surrounded 360 degrees by the dirtiest of the swamp. And at some point in time, in my opinion, he should have fired everybody in government and make them all fight for their jobs to come back.
Yeah, he didn't do a lot of deal. He didn't drain much of a swamp, did he? It must. Slick Witty's got a question here. I don't know even who this Jenna Ellis is. Do you know who that is?
Yes, Jenna Ellis was one of Donald Trump's attorneys. I think there are, and not naming names, but I believe that there are some people that can't handle the heat whenever they take it. Whenever you're attacked, and myself included, I will man up and say, I have literally been beat the F down.
Well, and you had to move.
I had to move across the country. I have not been able to hold a normal job since I did this. I've had to do all contracting work. I had one company that I saved from a ransomware attack. Not even joking. I saved them $10 million in a ransomware attack. And they said, we can't hire you because of the article that Washington Post did about you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, David Shelton, clerk here in Indiana, asked me to send you his number, which I've done. I can do a lot of things while people are talking here. So if you would give him a call, he would love to talk to you. He said he had some information about other states and everything. And I think you will have a very good, enjoyable conversation with him. Like I said, he's been on our show, sharp guy, ran for Secretary of State here, made a really good showing on it. And I would not be surprised if we don't see him back again running for the SOS. So
they need it. Raffensperger's not a good dude, in my opinion.
Are you talking about Indiana? We have Diego Morales now for Secretary of State here in Indiana.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about here in Georgia.
No, hey, you just told everybody where you were, by the way.
Oh, no, I'm not worried about it. Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be worried either. You got Dee Dee there. She's a pit bull.
She's
yeah,
savage.
I know.
I'll say it.
She's like, yeah. So, and then this is what her comment was. Damn, I was right. I always have to I always do the over and under on F-bombs. She'll drop on a show, and she's getting better. So hopefully we'll have a show coming up pretty soon. Hold on a second. Somebody asked a question while I cough.
Okay. Earlier, Josh, you said that you kind of assumed that it was going to be a trap January 6th, like, and your wife even mentioned to you, like, it's a setup. So if that's the case, like, did Donald Trump lure, like, a bunch of people to the Capitol what part did he help get people arrested?
No, I think he was told by people around him that it was going to be a chance for him to talk to a lot of really angry people, because you look at the million people who were there, they were easily riled up. However, in my opinion, not naming names, I believe people within his inner circle were trying to make him fall on his own sword so they could get him out of the way by his own actions.
Was one of them from Indiana? That might have
No.
been okay. So at least we ruled out Mike Pence. So
Mike Pence is a different issue because a
boy.
certain politician I'm friends with was in the room with Mike Pence and what's his name? Mike, who's the other? Paul Ryan. Back in October of 2017, when they were planning on getting Trump out and they were colluding to get Trump out. But that politician needs to grow some cojones and make it public.
Huh. So, and then Paul Ryan's gone. So, I mean, mysteriously, is that because of that?
Yes, because I believe Trump knew Trump was getting halfway decent intelligence. You know, in 2019, we tried like 10 different times to get him at least a briefing to tell him and show him the evidence that we found. And mind you, I gathered my evidence and built my report based off of State Department standards on evaluations of elections. Because when I went into the January 6th questioning, I think they thought I was just some dumb hick from Texas, because to a certain degree, that's how the media painted me. So when I start,
I think they tried to paint you as a guy that has served some duties and bounced around this and that. They really, the New Yorker ad, they tried to say some of the things that you had done, but pretty much that I think you were with one of the groups. What was the groups you were with? The Oath Keepers. Yeah. And they tried to connect you with that, but you had been out of that you've been out of the Oath Keepers for how many years now?
I left the Oath Keepers after the Bundy Ranch incident in 2014, because I was the guy who called the Bundy Ranch, and I had a friend of mine who was a colonel in the Army call me and tell me they were using drones at the Bundy Ranch, and possibly some of them were going to have weapon systems. So I was the person who called it. Spoke to Pete Santilli, and I spoke to Stuart Rhodes. That was some of the stuff I talked about in that article.
Yeah, I just was, they painted it like you were sort of a nomad gypsy that roamed around different things. But as any of our viewers could deduce from this right here is that that you know what you're talking about. I mean, you used a lot of words that I haven't ever heard before. So, but it all made sense to me. I mean, we're just a dumb Hoosier, but I try to do what I can.
John, you're not dumb. I just think that this is a lot to wrap your brain around, because I think it's like, the first big thing is there's no Santa, there's no tooth fairy. And then now you're telling us that there's so much fraud in our voting system that everything's rigged. And then, how many conversations end with, there's people pulling the strings. There's somebody who's in charge of all this. And
who's they? Who's the they? I want to know who they are.
Yeah. But it's just a lot. And I don't think that the average American wants to hear it, because it makes us sound like we live in the most powerful country in the world, but we are powerless.
It's like ghost ride a bike.
Yeah.
The unfortunate part is we used to be the most powerful country in the world. And because our citizens weren't vocal enough and weren't controlling this, we're now watching the globe splinter with things like BRICS. The UAE, which is, a member of OPEC, just signed on to BRICS, and they just said they will not take US dollars for oil. So did Saudi Arabia. So all of the people we've been buying oil while all of our oil drilling in the United States has been shut down will now no longer take the US dollar. So what's that going to do to our oil prices?
But dude, we need to be self-reliant, independent, self-fueling. I mean,
that ended in the 50s. Really, there's a fight going on that is nationalism, which everyone made it a dirty word, which nationalism is just, let's have America for Americans. Let's take care of our neighbors. I don't think there's anything bad in that. And then there's the globalists who believe we all need to be brought down to the lowest common denominator for the global population, except for an elite small group of people, which is also called communism, which a lot of our aunts, uncles, grandparents fought and died
against,
to stop.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, It's just the year 2024 is going to be a big year of, I think, exposures and things that are going to make you go, for sure.
But what is going to take everything to be able to fix it? I don't have faith. Government has always been the problem. It always has been. Even Reagan said, the 9 worst words to hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Here to help.
What is the solution is what our founding fathers said was the solution. And that's every citizen, every person that lives to the left of you and to the right of you. It's the citizens that make our republic a good place. And now when everyone gets, as they call it, red pilled, when you get slapped in the face and realize that we've been allowing our politicians to be controlled and picked by foreign interests, then that should be the pitchfork in everybody's butt to say, I'm making it better for my kids because I don't want my kids to deal with that.
Yep, and that's going to be a good. It's going to be a good one. I mean, I think we could go 2 hours on this show. We're going to go to the conspiracy theory, and Josh, you're not running for office or anything. Tiffany, if you want to go on conspiracy theory because you're an elected official, I'll let you go. So, but otherwise, you can watch. You can watch.
That's fair. I do have a conspiracy theory, though.
Okay, well, you're on it then. So let me play the thing. Let's get to it. Our chat's been very, very active tonight. I think there's a lot of questions on this. So at this time, I'm going to say thanks for being on, Josh, and coming out and talking to us about this. And I hope we can consider you our go-to guy for cybersecurity. We could put you on the official Mouthwash, list here of famous people on our show. So let's go ahead and play the conspiracy theory thing, and you won't be on the hot seat anymore, Josh. It doesn't seem like it bothered you at all. So it's not 9 hours of testimony at the J6 or anything. So just a conspiracy theory. So let's roll it.
Hey, y'all, it's time for the conspiracy theory, so you better get your tinfoil hat out, and let's see what's going on this week.
Okay. Let's put our people, well, at least we got, what is that hat you have on there? Is that a...
Oh, it's my Iron Man mask again.
Oh, Iron Man mask. Okay. It's good. So we're going to let our guests go first. Josh, do you have a conspiracy theory that you want to just get out there? Oh, well, hold on. Let me put the banner on here because somebody remind me of that. So there you go. Now it's official. If you say it, they can't get you for,
I think the most important conspiracy theory is an actual event that took place to just show how crazy 2024 is. And that is the mall in Florida where 8 to 10 foot beings were walking in the mall and hundreds of cops showed up and they tried saying a bunch of unruly teenagers got into a fight. But now we're seeing on video what look like interdimensional beings walking next to the mall.
Well, I just want you to know, folks, that me and Josh did not talk about our conspiracy theories at all. So, Tiffany, and that it might be sounding like you're Bigfoot.
No, mine is not as current as that, but I love that because I was watching that on Twitter trying to figure out what's going on in Miami.
It figures Miami.
I think that if teenagers and young people nowadays had to watch The Little House on the Prairie, they would be very triggered and it would be very dangerous for them to have to consume the idea of some traditional gender roles that were foundational for the advancement of our country as it was settled and came to be. I think that the way that people live in 2023 and 2024 compared to what settlers had to do, early Americans, it would blow their mind. They would be triggered. They would have no idea of understanding the role that they were to play in society or families if they had been born 150 years prior. So that's all. Can't hear you, John.
I was sick Thursday. I know I keep coughing and forgetting to turn that back on. I watched the complete Marco Polo series. That's another one that'll blow your mind about how the Mongolian and Chinese women were treated back in 1292 AD. That will definitely open your eyes on how that goes. And it's very interesting, but hint, it's produced by Harvey Weinstein. So there's a lot of, a lot of stuff going on there after the fact He made that. He got in trouble, what, in 2018, 19, 20, whatever. This was made in 18. So you draw some more conclusions after the fact on that. But Tiffany, I think you're right. It definitely be eye-opening to that. So Brad, what would you have today?
I'm going to go with Star Wars because, I'm a Democrat nerd, love it. But they announced a new movie with The Mandalorian and Grogu or Baby Yoda. My conspiracy theory is like the spoiler on this one is going to be that Grogu's father ends up being Lando Calrissian, played by Billy D. Williams. That's what I'm going to go as. I think Grogu has like a little more pizzazz to him than Yoda did, and I kind of attribute that to Billy D. So
I feel like I have Yoda voice tonight. So you may not believe this, Skywalker, but you guys, I did not talk to you about my conspiracy theory at all, but I actually have pictures tonight. You're going to love this. All right, I'm going to put up this picture here. I think a lot of people know what this is. That's the pyramids out there in Egypt. And, there's been some controversy about, I don't think the Egyptians ever built these. Well, I think that I found some research that may prove that that is true. So I want you to look at this picture. I don't know if you remember this movie. This is Predator. And and you can see he's coming out of his spaceship. And look, the stairs are almost like the pyramids. So he's actually the designer of the pyramids. And then he was able to call on his other friends, Optimus Prime. Now you think, well, the Predator, he can't pick up those big, heavy stones. Now, one thing about the big, heavy stones is they are all built in true north. And each of these stones are between 3,000 and 5,000 tons. And there's just no way Egyptian slaves could wheel those up that high. The pyramids are the highest built structures around for many, many years. So Optimus Prime and his, Transformers, they helped build the pyramids. Well, if you watched one of the movies, they were actually beamed up and they can't get back to Earth. So they're a little bit mad, but you think about it, the hieroglyphic graphics or whatever they call them, they look like aliens did it. So this is what I'm saying. The aliens were here first, then the Egyptians came here. And since the Optimus Prime and they were gone, they claimed that they did all these hieroglyphics, and the rest is history. And that's the government. The Egyptians covered this up. If you look at other man-made pyramids, they're just lumps of dirt. There's no design to them. Each one of these stones are really nicely made. And as a bricklayer, I can appreciate nicely made stones. Tiffany, what would you like to add?
Just a quick question. So if you piggyback on what Josh said about the mall in Miami, are they coming back? Are the aliens?
Yeah, they might be shopping for drapes for the pyramids.
I think they were always here.
Yeah, I
wanted to respond to one thing Linda Morrison said in the chat. The pyramids were proven not to line up with Orion. Dr. Zahi Hawass in 2011 and 2012 was able to prove they line up with the constellation Cygnus. And when he went to go look at the very Cygnus is known as the Southern Cross. And when he went to go dig where the top star is in the Cygnus constellation, they found Osiris's tomb with the sarcophagus.
There's no way you can't even build those today. Probably nobody's got the money and the equipment and the time and all that. It's just
they had a lot of time back then, and they didn't have the internet. So
they didn't need the internet.
Yeah,
no, I just mean like it wasn't this time killer. Like,
right. Well,
yeah. Now look at this. Now these things are what built in 5,000 BC, so they're what 7,000 years old. And look, they're losing a little skin and all that on there, but. I mean, come on, that's
they're older than
this
that.
is the order. This is the order. Wait, it's going to be like this. Okay.
Look at the Sphinx. The Sphinx
Predator came first. Optimus Prime came second. This is what they built. I'm just, you guys, we need to sell it and sell it hard. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
I think the Predator picture is at the mall. That's why the stairs are like that.
Well, and he is about 8 foot tall, isn't he? He's at the food court. He's getting a, teriyaki chicken.
That's what everyone must have seen in Miami.
Yeah, what they smoking down there in Miami? Hey.
So Brad, if they've always been there, are they shapeshifters? Are they nocturnal people? I mean, like, why show up at the mall on the 8th of January?
I think they probably just. I mean, I think they just know that we're getting used. Like, we don't even blink at UFO news anymore. I mean, honestly, they could probably all start looking like aliens now, and we would just go about our day.
I'm telling you, 2024 is going to be 2024. Get ready, buckle your seatbelts, people, because it's going to get crazy. There's going to be all sorts of stuff. Pretty soon, there's going to be a list of who didn't go to Epstein's Island. So it's going to be, we probably got 2 or 3 people on this show here that's probably been there, just not going to talk. Not going to talk till the evidence comes out. So another conspiracy I have. Yeah, that's right. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for coming on, Josh. We'll be in touch. I sent you David's, information. Give him a holler. Could be a job there for you because he's got a budget. He's got a budget. Don't know if he can afford the smarts that you have, but we'll do that. Brad, thanks for coming on. Tiffany, enjoy your time in Georgia. We'll see you back next week. I believe we may have Curtis Hill coming on next week. So we'll go from there.
Always
and,
fun.
let me get the banner off of here so we can get this thing over with and all that. So here is the ending. And again, thanks for coming on, Josh. And we'll see everybody again next week.
Thanks, John.